Hello from New York.
Greetings from London.
We continue our Media for Growth series, so I think this one will run a little while longer. If you've stuck with us the last two episodes, we've been talking about media as a lever for growth, and we think that that really is a plan for media directors in 2020. So this is a continuation of that series. In previous episodes, we talked about the need to position media as a lever for growth. And the previous episode, the last one, we talked about internal media operations, if you remember, and we were talking about how the media director can start to position media and their media operations as a source of growth for the business. And one of the things that we hinted at the end of that was to do diagnostic of your current media operation as a start point. And so this episode is talking now more specifically about how to do diagnostics for media. Right, so let's talk media diagnostics. Why is that an important start point?
Well, if we look at the last 18 months of kind of conversations that we've had with senior marketing leaders or internal media directors, what I've found so exciting is that the conversation or the questions have been elevated to a far more strategic level. Okay, so almost without exception, the media directors that we've been talking to over the last 18 months, 2 years, have started with an understanding of their own internal operating models. How do they future-proof their media requirements in order to capitalize on the opportunities that the marketplace offers? The question that is often asked is, how do I start? Where do I begin to understand what I need to improve in order to kind of future-proof my operating model? And that's when we start talking about diagnostics, understanding the limitations and the opportunities within their current operating model will provide a perspective as to where they need to go. We call that the as-is situation. And so by diagnosing the challenges and the opportunities, we can begin to start developing roadmaps for future improvement. So Tom, so what is a diagnostic?
Good question. Well, diagnostic is, as you just said, is getting a view of your current status and the idea to identify where the strengths are and things that should be protected, which is very important, but also where the gaps or the opportunities for improvement are.
Yeah.
And there's some things that generally you want to look at in a diagnostic. The first thing is to have it obviously give you insight, not just about your own model, but things that you might be able to learn from other advertisers as well. Secondly is to be able to benchmark that. So just the fact of doing a diagnostic creates a line in the sand, effectively, against which you will measure all future activities and improvements. So what we see in a lot of media operations within the advertiser is that they've been doing lots of stuff and they're incredibly busy, spread across this very complex function, and maybe they don't really know what their improvement has been over time. But the one consistent thing that we do know about media is that there has been so much change that's become a cliche, but it's hard to actually document that change over time. And so that's something that we see media directors sometimes have to wrangle with, which is they just feel like they're on this constant evolution. So just stopping for a second, not that you should stop doing media, but just reflect for a second, perform a diagnostics and create that baseline against which to benchmark future activity. If you are a new media director coming into the business for a first time, it's a really good opportunity, firstly to get a lay of the land, get those insights, but also to create that baseline against which you can then track your success, hopefully, as a media director for the business. So gives you the insights, creates the baseline, but the third thing is what we say is it levels the playing field. And what we mean by that is that media, as we've said a lot, can very often become quite a siloed specialism within the marketing organization. At worst, that becomes quite detached from being actually part of the marketing function and can sit sometimes as this, cost optimization exercise with the complexity down the chain. Doing a diagnostic actually allows the media org to reach out into lots of adjacent functions within the marketing organization. And it also reaches upwards in the organization. So it's a very good way of bringing your CMO, your CPO, even your CEO. We've had company CEOs and presidents participate in diagnostics. So it elevates the media function. It creates this level playing field of common understanding. So the opportunity in doing a diagnostic often is to rely on, companies like us. We are an objective external third party. And that can sometimes give a little bit more credibility and weight, particularly when you are sharing the results or the insights of that with kind of more senior stakeholders. And it gets a common understanding. This is where we are. And then you can start, and we'll talk about this in future episodes, defining where you want to get to and the actions you need to take to get there. Right then, so let's think about, if you're a marketer, you're a media director, CMO, what you should be doing. And David, I'm going to, as I can't ever resist, I can only give you a great quote, not of mine, but stolen from somebody else. And those of you familiar with Michael Porter, Professor Michael Porter, who's from Harvard Business School, very famous academic and writer about business and strategy, very famously said, I think this was in the 1990s, he published a kind of definitive, not the definitive, but a very important work on business strategy. And his enduring words are that strategy is simply choosing what not to do. And I love that sentiment. And I believe it's very true about any kind of strategic thinking. When it comes to diagnostics, that is so important, because doing good quality diagnostic doesn't just tell you things that are broken, perhaps, or gives you a whole list of things to do. Importantly, it tells you what not to do. And in media, if you're a media director watching this, you will, I'm sure, sympathize with this, is there is a lot of pressure from inside your business often, of all the things that maybe you could be doing or should be doing. Everyone's increasingly now has a point of view on media. Should we be in housing? Should we be in the Super Bowl? Should we be shifting more money to digital? Should we be building our own capabilities in lots of different areas? There's lots of questions that come to you as a media director. What the diagnostic allows you to do is to decide actually, and gives you the kind of evidence or quant base of things that you should not do, or you should not do right now. And one of the big outputs, I'm sure we'll come on to talk about this, is certainly in the diagnostics that we do, it gives you the things that are more important to address now, and then what you do next, and really things that should be addressed somewhat in the future. And that can be very, very helpful for the media director, just to ward off some of those pressures or impatience to try and do everything. So let me pass that back to you then. So what should marketers be doing? How can you start this?
Well, we can really only speak from kind of the experience that we've had working with advertisers over the last 2 or 3 years, specifically in this kind of area. And what we understood very early on is that, and we've talked about it before, but media can be so complicated and the language can be so complex that it can be very alienating. And so in order to make as many stakeholders feel invested in this important process, we needed to try and simplify the way that we conducted these diagnostics with these organizations. And so what we were able to do is we were able to try and package up the most critical components of media, the categories of media, into 7 key themes. And we conduct diagnostics against each one of these 7 categories. And that enables our clients to understand within kind of a very reasonable space where their current strengths and weaknesses are in a language that is acceptable within organizations, right? And so once they can kind of begin to socialize the findings from our 7Ts, from our diagnostic work, it's far easier to get traction internally. The other thing that we found is that we created a cloud-based technology, a tool that enables us to conduct these diagnostics quite quickly, and also allows us to sort of galvanize and access multiple stakeholders within organizations in a very relaxed and frictionless, free way. So the process is fairly quick. The process is exhaustive in terms of the people that we can actually reach, and it's very simple in terms of its output. And we found that is hugely valuable, because I think probably the fact that we're conducting it as an independent consulting company, and also the fact that it is facilitated and moderated by a tool, by a technology, provides that added objectivity to the findings, and we found that that's highly effective.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You know, we always say, like, doing the diagnostic is one thing because it gives insight, but also it's an internal communication tool.
Yeah.
You know, for the media director typically, because it allows a very consistent message to be spread across the organization, particularly into those adjacent functions. And that objectivity is critical. We found that having a technology that supports the consulting work absolutely kind of reassures people that this isn't, you know, it's a bunch of consultants sat in the room coming up with ideas, but there's a very robust framework for evaluation. And of course that helps then in the reporting.
Yeah.
I should add, I mean, if you're interested in learning more about this, you can go to idcomms.com/diagnostic, where you can see a bit more about how we approach these things. We highly recommend thinking about this year. And if you're trying to position media for growth, media as a source of growth, perhaps you work in a business where perhaps media is seen somewhat as a cost to the business, and as a media director, you feel pressured to constantly manage that cost down, and you start to view media as a commodity, bad thing. If you want to elevate media's role, if you want your company to see media as an investment in company growth, then starting with this diagnostic, getting this objective view about your operation is really the best place to do that. So, as I said, idcomms.com/diagnostics will give you a little bit more information of that. I should add, this always becomes quite an entertaining part of doing the diagnostic, which, you know, David, as you explained, when we try to simplify, we really try to simplify a very complex media function down to these 7 categories. And we wish that we could go smaller than that. It's very difficult, we find, to actually kind of get down to fewer number than that. But we've made it as easy, no offense to any CMOs happen to be watching, but we've made it as easy for CMOs to understand as they possibly can. So every category begins with T. They're pretty easy to remember. It's color-coded in pretty primary colors. The reporting is delivered in a very simple and nice-looking way. It's the kind of report that you could put, as a media director, that you would feel comfortable putting on your CMO's desk and bringing them in, and it's very readable. So we've just made it we're trying to make the media function as simple and as accessible for stakeholders as it possibly can be. And that is hugely empowering, I think, for the media leaders that we work with.
Yeah.
On our next episode, we will continue the Media for Growth plan, and we will look at the value of doing peer-based benchmarking. So as a media director, what can you learn from your peers in the industry?
Yeah.
But that's your media snack for this week. Click down below to subscribe, but thank you for watching.
See you next time.